Hello, welcome to Integral Yoga Podcast, live from Yogaville. Today I am joined by Jai Uttal. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. Evan.
Yeah, Jai is a sacred music composer, Grammy nominated. He has been leading Kirtans around the world for 45 years, creating a safe space for people to really open up their hearts and voices. So thank you once again.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be at Yogaville, and nice to meet you and to talk with you.
Yeah. I like to jump right in with this question. What matters to you?
Kindness and being present. I think that's the main foundation of spirituality. I mean, I have so many more thoughts about devotion and worship and the spiritual life, but I think it comes down to kindness, caring for others, and being there.
Is kindness something that you can practice at, do you think?
Of course. One time my guru said, love everyone. And, that seemed like, well, that sounds great, but that's impossible. I mean, I won't say impossible, but improbable. But he ended it by saying, and be kind to everyone. Yeah. And that you can do. That's a practice. I think love, as grace manifests, the love manifests. Or, over lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes. But the kindness is something that can be practiced every day.
In general, do you feel, because you mentioned lifetimes, so do you feel that there's a progression that's happening over generations, which is maybe challenging to see, in day-to-day life turmoil, but do you feel that there's a sort of progression that is happening towards the spiritual path, towards love, or...
You mean globally or within myself?
Globally, or as a species, even as a planet?
Well, probably from the beginning of time, there have been two streams, and the stream of evil and the stream of light. And you look at the world today, and it feels like we're plummeting toward the end of the Kali Yuga, and the reservoir of compassion and goodness seems to be drying up. And yet, at the same time, in a smaller portion, but significant portion of the world civilization, I feel that people are intensifying their spiritual practices and intensifying their desire to not only lift themselves up spiritually, but to manifest that in the world at large. And perhaps, I don't know, but perhaps as things get worse, the desire of the other core of people to do more, to invest more into the pure, into the sacred, and into the compassionate actions of life seems to grow and grow and grow. So yeah, I'd say both things are happening. The scale is not very level. The scale is like, it's not what you would call a balanced time in our global evolution.
You mentioned last night that I think you said that you can never feel useless.
I said, well, sometimes I feel useless, and I have felt useless, but that I realize there is never a time that you actually are useless.
Thanks for
There's always, useless is a mood that you can fall into, and it's it's a depression, but there's never a moment when there is not something positive and useful that you can do.
Is this the beauty of kind of the spiritual path in a way, and focusing on the internal work that we can do? Because although it's hard to feel useful in an external point of view, internally, there's always room to grow and to progress, right?
Well, yeah, that's true. However, I think in my life, the people that I've met who, seem so dedicated to helping the planet, well, they're very spiritual people, but they wouldn't present themselves as necessarily spiritual people. So I think people on the spiritual path have have a leg up, I guess is the phrase, on expanding and growing into seeing the bigger picture and how and exploring ways to help the bigger picture. However, there's also many spiritual people, and I use the word with a little bit of irony, who are only concerned with their own enlightenment, their own bliss, their own spiritual evolution, and far be it from me to put down at someone else's life path because I can barely find my own life path, but to me that doesn't seem to be the way that is needed. And bhakti yoga, devotional yoga, the quality of service, what's the word I'm looking for? Just the action. That love and ecstasy is an action. It's we don't chant and do japa and do wild kirtans just to get ourselves off. Well, I shouldn't say we, but I don't. And the service side of it, the giving to others, is the most important, I would say.
And doesn't it seem beautiful the way that nature is set up, that when we serve, something also happens internally? It's just like the byproduct, and the more sincere the service is, the more fulfilling it is internally. So that maybe is it really, my question would be, is it really even possible to only focus on, the internal and make a lot of strides there?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what those strides would be.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. When you step outside of yourself and help someone else, you feel better. That's really true.
It seems like hard to believe it, I think, perhaps in this time and culture that we're living in a lot. For me especially, I had to go internally and ask the question, is that really, really true that, service towards other people is maybe the best thing that I could do for myself? Is it really set up that way after so many years of, I don't know, through advertisements and culture? It just doesn't seem like that would even be possible. But.
Let me share a little experience. This was about, maybe 7 or 8 years ago or something like that. I was at my guru's ashram in the Himalayas, and my guru left his body in 1973, I think. And so the ashram has been tended like a garden by an elderly woman who was a devotee for many, 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 many years. So I was there, and she asked me to sing every afternoon in the middle of the courtyard 11 Hanuman Chalisas. Now, Hanuman Chalisa means 40. It's a 40-verse prayer to Lord Hanuman, the monkey god. And I had a loudspeaker. I made a microphone, and it was coming out of the loudspeaker. And the thing was that I had done that before, and it had been nice, Not a big deal, but a nice thing. But this particular week, I could not get out of self-consciousness. I was like one of 3 Westerners there, and the rest was Indians. And I know that they're my extended family, but at that time, all I felt was like, they're looking at me, they're judging me, they're critiquing me. Am I doing this right? And every afternoon, Ma, the woman who took care of the ashram, would praise me. So finally, at the end of the week, I went up to her and I said, Ma, it's beautiful to be praised by someone that you love so much, but I have to tell you, I feel a little bit like a fraud because actually this whole week I haven't felt anything. I've been singing and I've just felt like dry as a bone and full of self-consciousness, and I haven't felt my guru. I mean, it's just been, well, it's been tough. And she looked at me and she said, she was very stern. She said, Jai Gopal, that's my full Indian name, what does it matter what you're feeling? And, that knocked a whole lifetime of subtle belief systems right off the meditation cushion. I was raised to believe in my DNA, as everyone in this country pretty much, that we are the center of the universe, each one of us. So she says, what does it matter what you feel? You're doing your service. And she said, you Americans, many of you feel that doing service is eating an Indian sweet and blissing out under a tree, praying. But for us, service is often very filled with work, very filled with worry and effort. And she said, people are being touched by your voice. And if you don't feel it, it doesn't matter. Sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. But the process is happening, and you are serving your guru, and you are serving all the people around you. So anyway, this took a considerable amount of digesting, because we want to feel good doing what we're doing. And that desire to want to feel good, it's not like evil. It's not a bad thing. But then I looked around at the ashram there, because I stayed a couple of weeks more, and I saw that all the people, particularly the elders, there's a lot of old people, everyone was doing spiritual practice. Some people were chanting, some people were reciting from spiritual texts, Srimad Bhagavatam. Some people were cooking and serving food. Some people were serving chai. Many people were consistently cleaning this and that, and other people were doing the pujas, and I looked and I saw that nobody was actually doing these things for their own spiritual elevation. They were doing it for the others, for the people around them. They were doing it, yes, for the mystical form of the guru, but they were doing it, yes, more than that, to uplift everyone who came into this environment. And that was, really a mind blower for me. And the sincerity with which everyone was doing all of these practices was full on. It was, even the really old people, it was full spirit in what they were doing. And it just wasn't for themselves. Now, I can imagine and project, and I think it's true, that these people were quite happy and were living a very peaceful and, heart-opened, beautiful life. But self-realization wasn't their motivation. Service was their motivation.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And when I hear that, it's like, it seems just like this wham that takes you right out of yourself. Like, what does it matter? What you feel now.
That was the first thing she said. And it was very strong. And she was usually very, very gentle and sweet, but she was very adamant.
Yeah, it reminds me of being in an emergency situation where someone needs your help. Right there, you're not thinking about yourself, right?
Yeah.
It's just what needs to happen right now in order to help someone else. And I guess an inquiry for me is that type of feeling of living a life of service. Can we incorporate that into our daily lives, into our spiritual practice without an emergency needing to happen, right?
Well, that's the question. And in a sense, it's always an emergency, but without that panic, and there is also self-care is important. And, for me, that's hard. But learning to somehow take care of my internal energy world so that I don't get too depleted. And I don't have the answer to that balance.
Yeah.
But I know that balance is also important. I think in the movie last night, Swamiji was talking about that. And when people ask you to help, but you're so wiped out, you have to learn to say no.
Right.
So there is that element as well. But, becoming a father, and I know I'm not unique in this, but I've been what I would say, like a practitioner of bhakti yoga since I was 18 or something like that, and I'm 68 now. But when I became a father 14 years ago, was the first time really another human being was completely more important than me. And it wasn't out of obligation, and it wasn't out of, it's supposed to be like this. It wasn't out of emergency or anything like that. It was just out of complete love. And like somebody asked me, an acquaintance asked me, she said, Jai, now that you're a father, your bhakti practices must be falling apart. And at first I couldn't even assimilate the question. And I said, but after I kind of considered it, I realized, I think I'm starting to understand bhakti for the first time in my life. And it harkens forward to when Siddhi Ma said that to me. When I became a father, I worshipped this other little being and had to do a zillion things to take care of him, to keep him alive. And it was never a bummer. It was the primary, people say, doesn't he distract you when you're singing, when you're chanting? I said, well, yeah, but I like the distraction more than what I'm being distracted from. The love of my child. So it's not a distraction at all.
And it seems to me, just from listening to you, and I'm a new father as well, so there is a tiresome feeling that comes along with it, but at the same time, I wouldn't say that the experience, for me at least, is depleting, right? It's more this fullness that comes from just the experience of being a parent.
Yeah. I mean, every potential, like every friend or acquaintance that I speak to when their wife is pregnant for the first time, and they tell me all the fears and all the things. Is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And I say, well, yeah, all that's going to happen. But that's like this. And the expansion of your heart is like this. So, yeah, all those things happen, but they're like nothing compared to the rest of it. Now, of course, when I first became a father, I became this very obnoxious proselytizer for parenthood. But then I gradually realized, well, everybody's life path is different, and I can't tell people, you guys, your life is worthless if you don't have a baby. I mean, I was sort of coming from that place for a while, and that obviously is not correct. My challenges, a lot of my challenges were I'm not quite feeling it now, but maybe it'll come again. Was each phase of my son's development reminded me of my childhood in that age, and there was a lot of difficulty in my childhood, and so I kind of had to process in some way each of those stages. And, really make sure that I wasn't projecting my fears and my issues on my son. And, it was a really deep journey. That part wasn't easy for me. The diapers were always easy. The feeling of, is it even possible for me to be a good father? Those feelings were the ones that I had to really, really work with.
Yeah. The fear, I think, creeping in on all levels. But
Yeah. I'm not good enough.
yeah, I wanted to ask you. You mentioned something last night, and what is it? What is it like to feel fearless?
I couldn't say. Um, I have come to the place in my life where I can say to my fear, how you doing? You're here. I know you're here. I don't enjoy your presence, but my next step is going to be taken, whatever you say. So that's kind of where I am with fear. Sometimes I say, let's have fun with fear. I wish that I could say I'm fearless, but I'm not. I have a lot of anxiety. I have a lot of fears, but I don't let them paralyze me.
Right, and I don't mean it as a constant, even. But do you have moments, where you feel there's no fear here? I am fearless, and if so, like, what is that like?
Well, there's moments in singing, and there's moments in life. There's moments in loving, intimacy. There's moments occasionally in nature, It's moment for me. There's more moments in music when I just feel I could just fly away. That it's all, everything just opens up, and there's no impediment. And that's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful feeling. It's fleeting, but it's an incredible feeling when I feel that if I'm with a group of people and we're all doing this together, that is an experience that it's really hard to put into words. And it happens in the Kirtan experience, in the group communal chanting. It doesn't happen all the time, and it doesn't happen from start to finish. But I have to say it happens a lot for short periods, and it's wonderful. It's just like awesome. We're all together. We're all flying through the air, like completely on the winds of the devotional heart. So that's a great feeling.
Yeah. And you said, don't even think about doing this right.
Yeah, I said, don't think about doing this right. And if you find that you feel that you're doing it right, you can be pretty sure that you're doing it wrong. But I'm just sort of playing with words. But I don't want, both in myself and in the people that I'm with, to feel a sense of rigidity, that the practice, the melody has to be absolutely correct, and the emotion has to be absolutely spiritual, or all those things. I feel like, I used to feel, so I've been leading kirtans for a long, long time, and I used to have the feeling, I didn't think about it, but when I would reflect upon it, I knew that this is kind of where I was coming from, that I would lead a kirtan, and it was sort of my responsibility to get the whole room, get everybody off, kind of. And then it came to me, what an incredible burden that is. That's like, wow, that's exhausting, and so completely illusory. I mean, that's not the right word. So completely wrong view. It's just like, makes no sense, because each person is responsible for their own experience, and B, more than that, when we sing kirtan, we're putting ourselves in the hands of God, and whatever God wants us to experience, we'll experience. So suddenly, my job became a lot easier. That my job became simply to be as present as I could be, as authentic as I could be, as dig in to my heart as deeply as I could be, and also to do my craft as well as I can do it, which some days is good, sometimes not so, but then give the rest of the responsibility to God. And because these mantras are divine, The mantras that we sing are another form of God. You know, that's part of the philosophy. That when we say, for example, Ram, we're not just calling to Ram. We are Ram is manifesting within us because that name is completely He. So the responsibility was, you know, like I try to get to the gig on time, try to have a good meal and feel okay in my body as much as I can, try to not be phony, you know, because in front of an audience, sometimes you don't want to be, you know, there's the tendency to kind of want to hide and project something not quite authentic. So part of my job is to really, really try to be as authentic as I can. But as far as the experience that everyone in the room has, I no longer take responsibility for that. And it's very freeing, and I think it's more true.
Do you set an intention to be vulnerable?
No, yes, in a way, it's a life intention. You know, I mean, I don't set an intention before going on a stage or something, but it's the way I try to live my life. I also, you know, at my ripe old age, I'm also learning about boundaries. You know, when the time, I don't mean to shut down, but to cocoon a little. And I'm learning that, you know, a little late. But the vulnerability, well, about 20 years ago, two really big things happened in my life. And one was I got sober because I had been a very active drug addict, alcoholic. Even while you know, attempting to live the spiritual life and singing Kirtan and sharing devotion, you know, the different parts of me were quite out of sync. But anyway, that's a very long story, but I got sober, and I realized, well, the only way to stay sober, particularly in front of people, is to be vulnerable and honest. And the more, you know, I would use drugs to numb myself or put something in between me and all the people around me, because I was too scared of them, you know, too scared of being vulnerable and just kind of, to tell you the truth, terrified. So I kind of convinced myself that my connection was me and God, and that everybody else was something dangerous. So what I found when I got sober, through the process of getting sober, etc., was that letting people in and letting people see and know who you are with all your cracks, you know, all your very human wounds. Not that you have to have a group therapy session, I'm not meaning like that, but just that the realness of who you are is what elicits love and support from others. And so it really changed me. And then around the same time, I met the woman who I'm now married to. And I had, you know, of course, been in different relationships and stuff, but I never felt safe enough to become completely vulnerable. I never felt safe enough to open myself to this complete fear of being seen. You know, so it's like, you know, there's so much terror of being seen. So most of my early life, I chose to make sure I wasn't seen. And then suddenly, I wanted so desperately to be seen. It didn't take the terror away, but it didn't feel dangerous.
have you received the feedback that being authentic actually holds a lot of value, or the most value that we can offer to someone else? That when I'm being authentic, that's valuable for you, and vice versa.
Yeah, I have received that feedback a lot. And it's always very affirming for me. And plus, not only receiving the feedback, I feel it with others. You know, when you're with someone who's really being real with you, you feel that, and you want to connect with them, and you admire them. So yes, I received the feedback about myself, and also I've experienced it in others. So so a lot, like, people ask me also in terms of Kirtan students. Well, what should I do? I'm just starting out. What songs should I sing? Should I make the songs short? Should I make them long? Should I do them slow? Should I do them fast? Are there certain kirtans that you think are more accessible than others? A million different questions. And I say, listen, the best and the only real thing that you have to offer is the authenticity of your heart in that moment. And the song you sing, we'll sing what you want to sing in that moment. Don't try to try to seduce the audience, but just be as real as you can with them. And sometimes you might have the experience that half the audience will leave. It might not connect. But anything you do to hide that authenticity in order to get people to join you, you'll be joined by people with whom you don't want to be joined. As I don't know grammatically if that worked, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You want the people to stay who resonate with who you are, not who you may project yourself to be. You can find yourself being surrounded by people that you don't want anything to do with.
Right.
But if you're really, really authentic, you'll be surrounded by people with whom you share inspiration, share positive intention, share fun, share joy. And that's really cool. It's one of the ingredients of a beautiful life.
Is there something about the simplicity of Kirtan which allows us to go deep? Meaning, okay, now I've got this chant. We say it again and again and again. Okay, I got this. I know how it goes. Now I can kind of relax and go deep. Is that what happens?
I think so. And I think it happens subconsciously, like below. It's not like the mind is saying, "Okay, finally, I learned this melody. Now I can go deep." I think there's practical and mundane explanations, but there's also mystical and magical explanations. And well, first of all, I have so much reverence, I guess I could say, for the simple mantras that we sing. I worship them, the mantras themselves. So they do something that we can't understand why they do it. And I just take that as a gift from the ancient ones, the ancient ones, and perhaps a gift from the unseen gurus and the deities themselves. But the human creature, thankfully, responds to melody and to rhythm. We just do. And so, and also the practice of deep breathing has a very subterranean calming effect on the individual. So like we're combining this effortless concentration on melody and rhythm. It's not really concentration. We're just enjoying melody and rhythm, and melody elicits emotions, as does rhythm, and at the same time we're deep in this repetition, which repetition just very gradually, like it slips off the mind. The mind just kind of slips off because we're repeating this. And we're repeating it with feeling because the music and the rhythms generate so much feeling. So it's not like a dull repetition that you have to, force your mind to concentrate on, which perhaps has value at other times. But in Kirtan, it's a different kind of thing. It's a emotional and inspiring and engaging concentration. And so I don't even quite remember what the question was, but there's a way in which a group of individuals, because each person's individual, but a group of unique individuals in a group can kind of slip out of the intellect and into this expansive heart space without even quite exactly knowing how that happened, which I find endlessly amazing and endlessly fascinating and endlessly engaging. I'm never bored in a kirtan. No, that I couldn't say that. That would be a lie. That would be inauthentic. But I'm hardly ever bored in a kirtan. And this is even, this is more true than saying, it's not like I'm saying I'm in bliss every kirtan, because that would be like a total baloney. But the experience from moment to moment to moment is always so rich to me, even when I feel like I'm suffering. Even when I'm having a hard time, when I'm feeling internal oppression and challenges and stuff, it's always a deep journey. So there's moments, I guess, now and again when I just, like, time is moving really slow. What's going on? Is anything happening? But those are honestly few and far between.
And is a part of the spiritual path kind of accepting all variety of experiences that we're going through?
Unfortunately, right? Yes. No, I'm joking when I say unfortunately, but yes, of course it is. Life is not an easy proposition. I mean, human incarnation, and particularly now in our age, the global age of so much trouble, and human bodies that have suffering built into them, and there's periods of beautiful connection and intimacy, whether it's intimacy with ourselves or with nature or with others, and beautiful flow. And then there's periods of anxiety, of feeling lost, of feeling confused, of feeling physical pain. I mean, the dimensions of the rainbow of suffering is multicolored, as is the rainbow of light and beauty. So I guess, it seems that part of life is, well, how can I put this in a way that's not cliche? I'll just say like this. The last couple of months, I've been struggling with very bad asthma. I've had asthma since I was 6. And most periods of my life, it's been under control. I take medicine, But the last couple of months, I've been really struggling and suffering with it. And there's an anxiety around it because it very much affects my singing voice. So I'm thinking, like, am I going to be able to sing? And then just there's also like a deeper anxiety of, am I going to be able to breathe? And so a couple of weeks ago, I was just getting into a pretty depressed mood. around this, also feeling weak, and so my spiritual fervor was not very fervor-ish. But every evening I have a small, simple set of practices and prayers and rituals that I do before bed, and so I was, I had a little walk-in closet that we turned into a temple. And this is how low I got. I was sitting in the temple, and I was looking at the statues and the pictures, and I was thinking, are you guys real? Are you really there? And the answer, it wasn't like there was a big resounding yes. The answer was simply, do your prayers and don't trip on this. Act as if. And by the time I was done with my practices, I was very, once again, filled with that presence. So people ask me, well, what do you do, when you're not feeling it in the heart? This is back to also the same question from the very beginning. And what, don't you go through periods when you just don't want to do any sadhana? You don't want to do any spiritual practices? I say, yeah, all the time. And they say, well, what do you do? And I say, I do them. And it's just the same again as like being a father. Are there days that I don't want to help my son with his homework? Yeah, but I help him. And I think that's what's wanted of me. And sometimes it's a stretch. Like a couple of weeks ago, I was in Mexico and at a retreat, and I had done 6 hours in the day and singing and teaching and stuff. And it was evening, and I was wiped out. And I get a call from my son, and he really needed help with his homework. And did I, at that point, want to do that? Whew, no. But more than that, I wanted to be there for him, and the reality of what I wanted in that moment became less important than what was needed from me in that moment. Way less important. So I did it with him, and I was tired, and then we completed it and told each other we love each other, and I went to bed.
Again, the service. And how about the service of doing these workshops or camps that you do? Have you been doing them for a while, and are you seeing that the popularity is maybe growing in them, that it's really helpful and useful for people to have this experience of chanting for an extended period of time?
I think it, having an evening of Kirtan is a great thing. Having a weekend of Kirtan is a greater thing, because the expectations become more spread out, I guess. It's like we're not expecting for everything to happen to right now. And there's a more of a integrative process. Having a week of Kirtan or 10 days of Kirtan mixed with yoga, with Hatha yoga, mixed with storytelling, mixed with learning some technical things. Two things happen. One is that this vulnerability again, that we become such a beautiful family. Like my extended family is so big now, and with real affection, And then another thing is that we have a lot of fun, but then underneath it all, this process bubbles. I always do our Kirtan camps in a casual kind of way. It's not, I'm not strict or anything like that. We make it relaxed and fun, but just being in the practice for 7 or 8 days, a tremendous amount of underneath levels start just bubbling up, and it really, really, really deepens people's connection to God, to the divinity. we're on our 18th year. I mean, I do a lot of weekends all over the place. But for our actual Kirtan camps that are longer, we do a winter camp and a summer camp. And we're on our just going into our 18th year now. So this is like, before it was, I mean, it wasn't common then when we started. It actually was, I have to say it was completely my wife's idea. Because I came back from a weekend retreat somewhere, and even 18 years ago, traveling made me exhausted. So exhausted, and we looked at the finances and said, "Oh, you made really good money for that group," and and she said, "Look, why don't we do it ourselves? And we can stay at home, and we'll make the money ourselves, and you don't have no other elements to interfere with." And I said, "No way! Who would come?" So she said, "Let's give it a try." So we gave it a try. And, well, a couple of weeks before we started, we were sold out. And then the deeper level of insecurity came up, which was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to say to these people? What am I going to teach? And anyway, it became pretty clear pretty soon that everybody who was coming was the teacher. Everyone, not literally, but everyone was coming with a heart full of experiences, a heart full of longing, a heart full of things they wanted to learn, and a heart full of things they wanted to share. And 18 years later, I would say the camps just are better and better and better. As far as attendance, some years were jam-packed, some years not quite. So I can't really quite read that. But as far as the maturity of the students, it's really different. Each year there's just deeper and deeper. We get a lot of repeats, of course. But and then you look around and you see there's that Kirtan and Bhakti Yoga events around not just the U.S. but around the world are more and more and more popular and more prevalent, and that's a wonderful thing. I remember one time at Bhakti Fest, when it was really, really big, I asked the audience, I said, "I'm just curious why you're here," and but I wasn't like asking 4,000 people to give me an answer. But I said that, just quietly ask yourself why you're here. And then I said, every and any reason is a good enough reason if you're being honest with yourself. So I'm so happy to see you all here. And some of you are here just for the bhakti immersion. Some of you here might be here to try to find a girlfriend or a boyfriend. And that's beautiful also, if you're just real about it. And then I said, I'm so happy you're all here. And then, it was just a moment. It was a moment when, because it's different when you get 4,000 people together, the intentions and the motivations of 4,000 people are it's a wide spread. It's not an ashram. But nonetheless, it's an incredible phenomena to have that amount of people from many different walks of life coming and singing God's names together and dancing and enjoying that nectar.
Just what a blessing it is. I think it's so cool to give people permission to accept themselves. I think that's the coolest thing. Really say, okay, take a moment, reflect, and that's what I'm hearing you say. Is that I accept you, whatever the answer is for you that brought you here. That's okay. And it's like the most refreshing thing in the world. I think.
I think it's really vital. And again, when someone comes to a festival, hopefully to meet a soulmate, and just meditates and pretends that they're there only for enlightenment, then you get a confused person. And besides, there's nothing more beautiful than finding your soulmate. You know, I mean, that's part of life. That's why, you know, people are longing for connection to God, and people are longing for beloved connection with another person. Not everybody, you know, but many are the loneliness, the human loneliness, which is a reflection of our separation from the divine, is very pronounced and very painful for many people.
Yeah. Okay, final question.
Okay.
What's one thing that you would like to improve on yourself?
Well, I have this fatalistic thing that, like, anytime I get like a cold, I think, okay, I'm going to be sick forever. Or if I have a little argument with my wife, okay, well, I fucked it up. It's over. Or, you know, I start coughing and my voice becomes hoarse. Oh, I'm never going to be able to sing again. I don't know what word I would use to label that negative tendency, but I'd really like to graduate from that one and really know that, okay, you know, things happen, you know, get asthma, your voice is rough, you have an argument with your wife, and it passes, you know, and it passes so quickly. But for those moments when I'm in it, I think it's never going to pass. It's a very immature kind of psychology. And I would like to, that's what comes to mind when you ask that question. I mean, yeah, I'd like to become a better singer, a better guitar player, and a better husband, and a better father, and, you know, a better hatha yogi. You know, like I'd like to attend more to my physical body than I do to my, like, mind, heart, soul body. But those are all works in progress.
I don't think you're alone with that one at all. And I think it's this patience, right?
Yeah.
And maybe there is a maturity behind there too, to have that patience and just, okay, let me sit with this and all right, let's see what happens. And
Yeah.
maybe I'll
And you might ask me that question on a different day and I would have a completely different answer.
Sure. Yeah.
But that's just what was brewing in me right now.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing everything. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it, Jai.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. What's the podcast called?
Integral Yoga Podcast.
Integral Yoga Podcast.
Yeah.
Makes
Yeah.
sense.
There's so many people that come through here and are living here too, the sannyas and the reverends, and it's nice to try to capture that.
Yeah. Everybody has a unique and beautiful perspective. You know, one thing, you know, just to close up, like, but in our Kirtan camps and in life, but in our Kirtan camps, I encourage everybody to find their own way of expression. That, you know, it's fine and dandy to say, okay, we're all one. I know that on some level that's true, I guess. But we are all completely unique. And God made us that way, completely unique. So, you know, find each person, find the way to express your uniqueness, and use your individuality in your devotional practice. You know, don't call to God like he calls to God. Call to God like you call to God, whatever that might look like. And to cherish the uniqueness of each one of us, because it's not like a division, but it's like we're all different prisms of the crystal, reflecting the light in different ways, and to honor that, and to enjoy that, and to suffer with that, and just to be that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's close together with the sound of Om. Om Shanti. Thanks, Jai. That's
Thank you,
awesome.
Avi.
I wanted to ask you so much more about this one, the individuality and the spiritual practice. I love it so much because it seems like that's the wonder of our planet. Both there's so many different types of humans and there's so many different types of animals and plants, and it's like God telling us, like, oh my gosh, this variety here, like, acknowledge it. It's amazing.
And many groups and spiritual kind of things, kind of want people to suppress that individuality. And as you said, it's like, it's so obvious. You just look around. Every leaf is different. So likewise, every person is different, and that's a beautiful thing, not a bad thing.
And the power that comes from feeling like I wouldn't rather be anyone else than I am, or even that it's just preposterous to even consider it, because how could I even know? And there's this tendency to like stack ourselves up. How do I compare to someone? But it's like you can never do it. You can't put our lives on a spreadsheet.
Yeah.